So I was able to talk to them about resignation and about opposing policies in an administration. And when you look at it, it's, I tried to say to them, it's not just this administration, but if you all are considering working in government, virtually every administration will have things in it that you may not agree with. And then what do you do about it? Do you go along with it? Do you try internally to try to change things? And that's the way I did for most of my career. I mean, there were a lot of policies that I worked on behind the scenes to try to get switched around within our government and within our military. There were a lot of things that people are doing behind the scenes to try to temper some of the policies that are cooked up by politicians that suddenly become the leaders of our government. So I was talking to these young kids about the challenges that they would face and spreading it out over a long period of time of what they could expect if they go into government. Because we don't, no matter what administration comes next, there will be some things that we'll all be disturbed about. If one candidate gets it, we'll probably be more disturbed than about more things than if the other candidate gets it. But it's just inherent in the nature of government that there will be some things that will come along. But then what do you do? I mean, when does it reach the point that you can no longer serve officially in your government and that you do have to take a choice and make a choice perhaps to resign? Some of the stories we tell about in the book, Dissent, Voices of Conscience, are about those men and women who have had to make those choices. And we talk about civilians in our own government. A young woman that was an FBI attorney who was in their Office of Ethics, or actually Department of Justice, and in the Office of Ethics of the Department of Justice. Now, do you think they still have that office in our Department of Justice after this? Here we've got all the scandal about the political manipulation of hiring and firing people in the Department of Justice, firing sitting district attorneys based on political stuff. Well, this was back in 2001, though, before all of that really started happening. It was right after the U.S. forces went in, or the U.S. government went into to Afghanistan. I think it's October 11th is the day the first CIA went into Afghanistan. The CIA was there long before the U.S. military got into Afghanistan. A large number of paramilitary CIA went in to make contact with the warlords there, who we were going to pay to fight the war. And we did. We paid them millions, perhaps billions of dollars to fight against, try to push the Taliban out, try to push Al-Qaeda back up into the mountains. And they did part of it. They took great opportunity to go after the Taliban, who they had a score to settle with because it was the Taliban that pushed the warlords out of control of the cities around Afghanistan. And so the Taliban kind of took it badly. They suffered a lot of culturally unacceptable deaths, because in the old Afghan way, you don't really kill your opposition if they're Afghans. Everybody's always being bought off by somebody, and so you happen to be working for one of the warlords that turned out to be weaker, but you don't, if somebody else comes in and is about to win, you don't kill them all. They surrender to you, they become part of your forces, you pay them. But during this one, the Northern Alliance and some of the others of the old Mujahideen, the warlords, started killing off a lot of the Taliban. And in fact, if you want to see a documentary about it, the British Human Rights Organization did a documentary called Afghan Convoy of Death. It's pretty interesting. Well, here we are, though. The U.S. was into Afghanistan. CIA first, then Special Forces coming in. The first Taliban that were gathered up in the northern part of the country, they were put into a big prison. And there was one Taliban that spoke a language that our troops could understand, English. Most of the troops we had in didn't speak a lot of Pashto, Dari, none of those. But here was this kid that can speak Spanish. And it turned out, speak English. Turned out it was an American. We now call him the American Taliban, Johnny Walker Lynn. Well, when he was captured, the phone call went back, satellite phone, all the way back to Washington. We've got this American kid. He speaks English. We need to interrogate him. He's one of the few we can talk to. He may know something. We need to know it fast. Well, the call went into the Office of Ethics at the Justice Department, and a young woman named Jesslyn Raddick picked up the phone. Oh, well, if you interrogate him, I mean, you can interrogate him for intelligence purposes, but what information you gain from him can never be used in a court of law should the United States decide to prosecute him, because, you know, he's an American. He gets a lawyer. He doesn't have to talk to you. If he talks to you without that lawyer, anything that he uses can't be used in a court of law. Anything he tells you can't be used in a court of law. So they interrogated him. We don't really know what they got out of him. But, you know, remember those pictures of that kid coming back? He was pretty well stripped naked. He had soot marks all over him. He had actually been down in the basement of the prison in the lower part with a lot of Taliban who had gone down there to escape some fighting that had broken out up in the upper part. And the way the Northern Alliance decided to get him out was to, well, there was some water down in the basement of it, and they decided to pour some gasoline on top of the water and set it on fire. So there were a lot of people that came out of there burned. And Johnny Walker Lynn came out singed and burned too. Well, we saw him as he got, they put him on that big board, and then they interrogated him that way, and then sent him on back to the United States, where he was put in detention, federal detention, and then lo and behold, suddenly a case appeared in court. The U.S. was prosecuting him. And Jesslyn Raddick thought, oh my goodness, well, we better make sure that information that he gave during the interrogation is not used. So she went to the files to make sure that everything was segregated. There were no files left, or the interrogation part was gone. She went to her boss, where are all the files on Johnny Walker Lynn? The boss said, what you see is what's there. Well, Jesslyn said, there's more than that. I mean, I had multiple emails back and forth. We had all of this memorandum of record of conversations, telephone conversations. Where is the paperwork on it? That's all we've got. Well, Jesslyn, there's more than that. So she went down to the bowels of the Justice Department, and one fella helped her go into the computer system, and sure enough, they found the old emails. They were there after all. So what would you do if you were a young, bright, upcoming Yale Law School graduate hired in the presidential program for outstanding legal scholars, and you have your first job, your first federal job, and you're thinking, I probably am going to work for the Justice Department the rest of my life. I may even rise to be the Assistant Attorney General of something. But you have this on your hands. You know that your Justice Department has done something wrong. And it's the Justice Department, for God's sake, you know? They're the ones that are supposed to be protecting the rights of everyone. They're supposed to know the Constitution. They're supposed to prosecute people for breaking the rules. They're not supposed to break the rules themselves. So Jesslyn Raddick looked into her soul, looked into her conscience. What should she do? What was right to do? Should this kid be brought up on charges based on information that should not have been put forward to the court? Well, Jesslyn Raddick decided she would take those materials, those emails that they had gotten from the bowels of the Justice Department's computer, and she Xeroxed them, and she sent a set of them to, wasn't John Ashcroft, the Attorney General. It was Newsweek.